Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
This is Sultan Oman Television News at 8:30. Good evening. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. A top aide to Iraqi spiritual leader Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani was among 18 people killed in insurgent attacks across the country today, including a bombing near an office of Prime Minister Ibrahim Jafari's party. Sheikh Kamaluddin al-Ghurafi, a senior advisor to al-Sistani, was shot dead with two others in Baghdad on his way to Friday prayers. An Iraqi Defense Ministry source said that a suicide car bomber also blew himself up near an office of Jafari's Dawa party in western Baghdad, killing one and wounding another. Other attacks in Baghdad and in and around the restive city of Samarra further north killed 14 police and soldiers and wounded at least 7. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 American and Iraqi troops have detained more than a dozen suspected fighters in a counter-insurgency sweep through Iraq's western Anbar province. Police shot dead a suspected suicide bomber at Turkey's Justice Ministry today after he apparently tried to set off an explosive device. Turkish television showed live footage of police shooting at the man, said to be between 25 and 30 years old, in a street in the leafy government district of the capital Ankara. Witnesses said the man tried to enter the ministry near Prime Minister Tayyip Erdogan's office, but triggered the security sensors. Police grabbed him after he apparently set off a detonator but failed to explode his main device. He escaped into the street where police shot him first in the leg and then in the head. The incident revived memories of 4 devastating suicide bomb attacks in Turkey's largest city, Istanbul, in November 2003. More than 60 people were killed in those attacks.
أعلن البيت الأبيض أن السلطات الأمريكية بدأت التحقيق في اتهامات أطلقها رهائن أمريكيون سابقون.
The White House announced that American authorities have started investigating claims made by former American hostages that the elected Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was one of the hostage takers who held them in the American embassy in 1979. This comes in the framework of a series of accusations made by American and Western officials soon after the triumph of Ahmadinejad in the 9th presidential elections in Iran.
ثم خلق ماض ينسجم مع هذه الاتهامات.
European and American authorities in particular make their accusations first and then modify the past to justify their claims. This is how they are dealing with the elected Iranian president Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. They accuse him of being an extremist and that he does not believe in democracy and freedom. After the elected president Ahmadinejad won the majority of votes in the second round of elections, accusations were made of his alleged role in raiding the American embassy in Tehran in 1979. To back these claims, they used statements made by former hostages who were held in the American embassy for months. However, many of the Iranian students who participated in raiding the American embassy in Tehran and in holding the hostages refuted accusations that the elected president Ahmadinejad was among them. For example, former parliament member and reformer Mohsen Mardamandi, who strongly competed with Nejad over the presidency, confirmed that the latter was absolutely not among the students who attacked the hub of spies, which is the name used to refer to the American embassy in Tehran. Marmandi also added that Nejad was never present when the students talked about this matter, confirming that the bearded man, who was leading one of the blindfolded hostages as appeared on the internet site, does not resemble the Iranian president. Similarly, the reformers Abbas Abdi and Hamid Rida Jalai denied any participation by Ahmadinejad in the hostage-taking operation. Meanwhile, White House spokesman Scott McLennan said that the American authorities have started investigating accusations made by former American hostages that the elected Iranian President Ahmadinejad was among the hostage takers. Many believe that these accusations against the Iranian president were prepared in advance, which explains why they were immediately released after the election results were announced. This is an indication of how the political war between Washington and Tehran will look like in the future. It seems that all means are allowed, especially the use of witnesses who give false testimonies.
Iraqis have been responding to a statement by U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. Speaking on U.S. television, Mr. Rumsfeld warned it may be years before the insurgency in Iraq is defeated. He also said that U.S. officials have met with insurgents in Iraq. The meetings come amid growing concern in the U.S. about rising casualties and warnings that the insurgency is strengthening.
Concerning the recent American statements that there were negotiations with Iraqi armed men, I am for this idea. The continuation of attacks will harm only Iraqis, as US troops are hurt in only 5% of all explosions that take place in the whole of Iraq.
Regarding the recent statements made by U.S. Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld that U.S. officials held talks with Iraqi armed groups, we fully support any agreement that might be reached with armed men. We have been passing through hard circumstances full of terrorist operations and car bombs that made people unable to go to work.
Senior politicians are calling for a full inquiry into the activities of U.S. intelligence operatives in Italy. A Milan judge has issued arrest warrants for 13 CIA agents after they allegedly abducted a suspected Islamic militant and took him to Egypt for interrogation. Hassan Nasser was the militant imam of a Milan mosque. He was the subject of an investigation by Italian authorities for terrorist links. He was seized on 17th of February 2003 while walking to his mosque. In issuing the warrants, Judge Chiara Nobili took an unprecedented stand against the US policy of extraordinary rendition, popularly known as outsourcing torture. A Pakistani woman who was gang raped on the orders of a village council has launched an appeal in Pakistan's Supreme Court. She's going to fight the ruling that acquitted 5 of her alleged attackers. The assaults on 36-year-old May in June 2002 were ordered to punish her family for her 13-year-old brother's alleged affair with a woman from a higher caste. Police say the tribal verdict was illegal, but Pakistan has a tradition of tribal justice in which crimes or affronts to dignity are punished outside the framework of the country's judicial system. May has won international praise for speaking out against her assault.
Of course, we have hope that justice will be done in the Supreme Court. That is why we are appealing to the Supreme Court. And but today preliminary issues only were taken up, and the matter will be again taken up first thing tomorrow morning. So I think we are seeking a reappraisement of the evidence from the Supreme Court, and we hope to get that done.
I was dragged away by the people. I begged them not to do this. I begged them to stop, but they would not. My uncle and my father tried to stop them, but they didn't stop.
A former Israeli soldier has been found guilty of the manslaughter of a Briton shot in the Gaza Strip in 2003. Ex-Sergeant Wahid Taseer was convicted by an Israeli military court of killing Tom Herndl from North London. The court found Taseer had shot Herndl with a sniper rifle using a telescopic sight. In a confession, Taseer said he wanted to teach Herndl a lesson for entering a forbidden area. 22-year-old Herndal, a student, was killed in the Rafah refugee camp. He'd been photographing the work of international solidarity movement there. ISM activists often place themselves between Israeli forces and Palestinians to try to stop the Israeli military killing them or destroying their homes.
I did not kill. As I said before, there is a lot of discrimination in this country. It is especially because of the media and also because it is Britain. If it was a Palestinian who had been killed, the case would be closed a long time ago.
The concern that there is a policy that seems to be prevalent in Gaza amongst the Israeli soldiers and army that they feel able to shoot civilians really without any accountability whatsoever.
Court today convicted an IDF soldier of manslaughter in connection with the killing of a pro-Palestinian British activist 2 years ago. IBA's Yochanan El-Rom has more on that story, and we caution you, some of the video contained in the report is graphic. You may find it disturbing.
The three-judge military panel ruled that Sergeant Wahid Taysir, a member of the Bedouin Tracking Regiment, was guilty of manslaughter. Taysir, who is no longer in the army, was convicted of the death of British citizen Thomas Herndal, an activist with the pro-Palestinian International Solidarity Movement. He was also convicted of obstruction of justice, giving false testimony, and soliciting false testimony. Sentencing will be at a later date. Manslaughter carries a maximum term of 20 years in prison. The 22-year-old Herndal was shot on April 11, 2003, as he tried to help children get out of the line of fire during a firefight between Palestinian terrorists and IDF soldiers in Rafiq in the Gaza Strip. Sergeant Taysir first told investigators that Herndal had shot at him with a handgun, but later retracted that claim and admitted to firing in the direction of an unarmed civilian. Herndal received first aid from Palestinian medical personnel before being transferred to Soroka Hospital in Beersheba for further treatment. He was later sent to a hospital in London. He died 9 months later in January 2004 of pneumonia, having never regained consciousness. Herndal's family made several trips to Gaza to conduct their own investigation into his death. However, today the Interior Ministry denied entry into the country to Herndal's younger brother William after he refused to sign a guarantee that he would not take part in pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Yochanan El-Rom for IBA News.
And lawyers for both sides have these reactions following today's verdict. Let's hear them.
Concern that there is a policy that seems to be prevalent in Gaza amongst the Israeli soldiers and army that they feel able to shoot civilians really without any accountability whatsoever.
We are planning to read the judgment, the verdict, very, very carefully, and afterwards we think there is a great chance that we will appeal on the judgment.
Meanwhile, Palestinians scored a direct hit on an Israeli home after firing mortars at a settlement in the Gaza Strip. No one was injured in that attack, but the house was seriously damaged. Another mortar exploded in a greenhouse in the settlement of Gadid. There were no injuries in that incident either. Soldiers also discovered a tunnel near the Neve Dekalim industrial area, dug apparently by Palestinians intending to carry out a terror attack. Shock and dismay in the Labour Party today following last night's display of violence at the party's Central Committee meeting in Tel Aviv. The Central Committee voted to postpone the Labour primaries indefinitely because of the revelations of corruption in the party's membership drive. But Party Secretary Eitan Kabel abruptly declared the meeting closed after it erupted into verbal violence that crossed the line at times into physical blows between supporters of Amir Peretz and those of former Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Labour's Leadership Bureau today condemned the violence and said it would take immediate steps to clear the air and uncover any illicit dealings connected with that membership drive.
The 15-year-old Palestinian boy who was the victim of the lynching is trying to recover from the shock and the wounds he sustained. Today he told our reporter Shlomi Elder about the whole incident that almost caused his death. According to his version of what happened, one soldier is responsible.
Don't touch him. Die. He is a dog.
Someone hit my arm and someone else hit me in the head with a stone. He twisted my arm behind my back and tried to break it.
Let him sit over there.
Any normal person would be shocked by these images. The Palestinian boy moved to his grandfather's home in Khan Yunis. His cousin was a witness to the barbaric actions of the settlers in Gush Katif.
I was present at the time of the incident. Of course, the Israeli soldiers assisted the extremist settlers who beat him. One of the soldiers twisted his hand and forced him into the corner. Then the settlers attacked him.
Tell me what happened. Did the soldier hit you?
Yes, the soldiers hit me and made it possible for the settlers to hit me.
The soldier was the one who started hitting you?
Yes, he hit me first and made it possible for the settlers to hit me.
All of you, get out of here.
It looks as if the soldiers were the ones who have saved his life, but these pictures were taken later.
What can I tell you?
How do you feel?
How do you think I feel? I was very exhausted, but at times I was unconscious, and I did not feel anything, and I didn't know who was around me. I woke up in the hospital.
After the lynching, Ziad was allowed to move from Muasi to his grandfather's home in Khan Yunis, who hasn't seen him in many years.
Thank God he's alive. He almost died. His spirit left him and came back.
When I came to my grandfather's home, I did not know him, and he didn't know me. My uncle didn't even know me until I told him my name.
Ziad, the victim of this lynching, feels he's got a new life.
I should be dead, but God has given me a new life.
And we close with a story of a new theme park of biblical proportions in the Red Sea resort town of Eilat. IBA's Sheila Zucker takes a look.
Welcome to King City, Israel's answer to the Magic Kingdom. The newly opened Bible-themed amusement park in Eilat is the Red Sea's latest attraction. The beachfront city is believed by many to have been a frequent stop in the travels of several biblical monarchs, including King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, which is why the park is based on biblical themes. Visitors can watch stage scenes at the Cave of the Bible, the Cave of Wisdom, and other state-of-the-art ancient attractions. Investors in the $31 million project are hoping to attract hundreds of thousands of visitors, with admission costing over 100 shekel or $22. Discounts will be given to groups, children, and IDF soldiers. This is Sheila Zucker for IBA.
The crisis of travelers on the Egyptian side continued for the second week in a row. The Israeli side did not take into consideration the agony and suffering of travelers who are forced to spend 3 days returning to the Palestinian territory. Mr. Jean Dogard, the UN Human Rights Coordinator in Palestine, visited the border and met a number of travelers and was briefed on their suffering. Dogard said he was greatly astonished at what he saw and asserted that a complete report is to be presented to the United Nations on this catastrophe. He called on the Israeli side to respect human rights in Palestine and facilitate travelers' movement through border crossings. For his part, Administrator Director of Rafah Border, Osama Al-Assar, asserted the continuity of the crisis as a result of Israel's rejection to deal with the situation seriously and using baseless excuses.
I'm the Special Rapporteur to the Commission on Human Rights violations in Palestine, and I think it is very important that I should come to Rafah Terminal to see the suffering of people who have waited for many days to cross into Palestine, and I'm quite appalled at what I have seen today, and I will be reporting back to the United Nations on what I have seen. I realize that this has been going on for many years, and it seems that the international community is not sufficiently concerned about the suffering of the Palestinian people.
Minister of Detainees and Ex-Detainees Affairs Sufyan Abu Zaideh called for halting all kinds of torture the Palestinian detainees face inside Israeli jails which breach Geneva 4th Convention.
The Congregation for Palestinian Rights condemned today the Israeli practices and torture practices against Palestinian detainees. In a statement issued on the occasion of the International Day Against Torture, the congregation affirmed that Israel has still been practicing all kinds of psychological and physical torture against detainees while integrated, adding that Israeli jailers make light of the detainees' religious beliefs, severely beat them up, and use them as human shields, calling upon an international human rights organization to pressure Israel to stop all kinds of torture and humiliation practiced by Israeli jailers against the Palestinian detainees. Meanwhile, in its report on the occasion, Ministry of Prisoners Affairs said that 69 Palestinian detainees have been killed since 1967 in the Israeli prisons, asserting that Israel is the only state which practices torture as an official means supported politically, pointing out that Israel daily violates all international pacts and law which prohibit exercising torture against detainees, concluding that Israel Prisons Administration has recently escalated ways of torture which are internationally prohibited in an attempt to humiliate the detainees. Also, in a special report on the University Palestinian Prisoners Society, said that the Israeli government has been legislating torture and committing criminal acts against Palestinian detainees, affirming that Israeli jailers practice so-called military integration, which is ruled by Supreme Court and the legal advisor.
In its weekly report, Palestinian Red Crescent Society said that the Israeli army has continued to violate international humanitarian law and fundamental human rights by restricting freedom of movement to the Palestinian Red Crescent Society's ambulances and its medical teams, asserting that Israeli delay and denial of access, arbitrary searches, and an attack on PRCS ambulances had a negative impact on wounded and sick in El Bire, Bethlehem, and Nablus, asserting that these practices constitute a breach to the 4th Geneva Convention and the first additional protocol of the Geneva Conventions, which are legally applied to the occupied Palestinian territory.
Israeli artillery shelled South Lebanon for the second consecutive day today near a disputed border area where an outbreak of fighting has seen at least one Israeli soldier killed this week. Israeli aircraft flew over South Lebanon as 3 shells landed on the Ramsa area on the Lebanese side of the blue line drawn by the United Nations, marking the border between the two foes. No casualties were reported. Earlier, the UN expressed serious concern over the flare-up of fighting between Hezbollah and Israel in the disputed Shib'a Farms border area. The UN also repeated its call for Beirut to implement full sovereignty throughout its territory and to dismantle armed factions. Kinda Shahid has the details.
The 15-member UN body called on Lebanon to extend control over the entire country by deploying its army in all areas and said Lebanon must put an end to all attacks emanating from its territory. French Ambassador Jean-Marc de la Sablière urged both sides to respect the blue line drawn by the world body to mark Israel's withdrawal from the south of Lebanon in 2000. The UN envoy for southern Lebanon, Geir Pedersen, added that the Israeli authorities should refrain from their air violations of the blue line. Pedersen also called upon the government of Lebanon to extend its control over all of its territory, to exert its monopoly on the use of force, and to put an end to all attacks emanating from its territory. Resolution 1559, approved by the UN Security Council last September, demands the disarmament of Hezbollah's military wing and the deployment of the Lebanese army in the south, which is currently patrolled exclusively by its armed members. The latest call came after Israeli helicopters struck at Hezbollah a day after the armed group killed an Israeli officer in the worst border violence in 6 months. According to witnesses, Israeli aircraft fired missiles at Hezbollah positions and later raked hillsides with machine gun fire inside South Lebanon. De la Sablière said, according to UN information, Hezbollah appeared to have made the first move in provoking yesterday's incidents. Hezbollah was instrumental in ending Israel's 22-year occupation of southern Lebanon in 2000. The two foes have clashed sporadically in the Shebra Farms area since then. Lebanon and Syria say the Shebra Farms is Lebanese territory, but UN claims it was part of the Syrian Golan Heights, which Israel has occupied since 1967. Lebanese Information Minister Charles Rizit, who is part of a caretaker government, called for French and U.S. pressure on Israel to quit the disputed zone. Rizit called on the sponsors of Resolution 1559, France and the United States, to pressure Israel to quit the Shebra Farms if it was serious about seeing Hezbollah disarmed in accordance with the resolution. He told the official ANI news agency if the international community really wanted Hezbollah to disarm, it must first remove the reasons which led Hezbollah to take up arms in the first place. Diplomatic sources have said that the UN Security Council would hold consultations Thursday on the Middle East at the request of the United States.
تصل السياحة العربية في سوريا إلى الذروة خلال الصيف.
Arab tourism to Syria reaches its peak during the summer, constituting 77% of total visitors to Syria.
يصل موسم السياحة العربية في سوريا إلى
Arab tourism to Syria reaches its peak during the summer months, and consequently Syrian tourism agencies respond by providing all possible accommodations. This reflects the government's policy of making tourism an important industrial pillar of the Syrian economy.
Arrangements are made largely to accommodate Arab tourists, especially from the Gulf. Beginning at the border and during their stay, they are provided with all possible services. The initial statistics show a 22% increase over the past 5 months, in comparison with the same period last year, which was also a good one. God willing, we are looking forward to a large number of visitors and tourists from the Arab countries.
Activities during the summer vary in their location and nature, appealing to the visitors' varying tastes, especially from the Arab countries. Both private and public sectors contribute in making these events happen.
There are going to be a variety of things to do, from entertainment to the arts and even sports. Of course, these activities are provided by public and private sectors, as well as by other companies that organize galleries. It is important for the tourist to attend various activities so he can enrich his stay. Without a doubt, there is one point that must be mentioned, which everyone that comes to Syria experiences. All visitors feel comfortable, safe, and secure everywhere they go, whether they are in the cities or outside of the cities.
Arab tourists, especially those who are coming from the Arabian Gulf, express satisfaction to their experience in Syria at all levels. I'm very appreciative of our visit because everything is nice, from the weather to the way you treat people. You are very nice to us. In terms of hotels, they are clean. In general, the streets and restaurants are very clean. Everything is good, and the Syrian people are very kind. God bless your country. Everything in it is beautiful, and your treatment of people is great.
The Syrians are just like the Kuwaiti people. We are brothers. They are very hospitable. Thanks to God. What you're doing is more than enough.
This year, visitors to Syria will experience improved services, activities, and events. The Syrian Tourism Ministry has always been open to all suggestions.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.